Welcome, everyone. This is the Masterclass. My name is Patricknazareth. I have around 30 years of teaching experience and I would like to help dispel your doubts should you have any. Today, we are going to do the chapter The Enemy, written by Pearl S. Buck. Pearl S. Buck was an American writer born on June the 26th, 1892 in Hillsborough, West Virginia, USA. Her parents were both missionaries. They went to China and Pearl S. Buck spent most of her childhood and early adult life there. The result, she grew up speaking both English and Chinese. She became famous for writing about Chinese life and culture. Her most famous novel is The Good Earth, written in 1931, which tells the story of a Chinese farming family. This particular novel won the Pulitzer Prize in the year 1932. She went on to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1938. She mainly wrote about the lives of ordinary people in China and Asia, which helped Western readers to understand Eastern culture. Do you harm somebody who is your enemy, or do you understand that you are a human being and humanity is more important? This is the story of Dr. Sadao Hoki. The story opens when he is in his house, which is on the beach itself. He is looking at the pines on the island. He used to climb those pines in his bare feet, the same way he had seen islanders in the South Seas climb the coconut trees in order to get coconuts from them. His father used to tell the South Sea Islands will provide the means by which Japan will be able to expand the territory. The father was a strong nationalist who believed that Japan should expand her territories vigorously through conquering other places. Sadao, as a young boy, took everything that his father said very seriously. His father never joked and played with him. He was his father's only son, and everything that his father said was very important to the young boy. At 22, the father sent him to America to study to be a surgeon. He came back at the age of 30, and before his father died, he had seen his son grow up into one of the finest doctors and scientists Japan had ever known. In fact, he was so important that when the war broke out, he was not sent to the front to fight. He was left alone to work on his most recent research, which included a way to treat wounds in order that they might not get infectious. Also, the general in charge of those islands had a medical condition for which he kept Sadao Hoki close. Clouds were rolling in from the sea. Mists were forming. He was wondering whether he should go into his house when his wife Hana comes out to meet him. He remembers how he had met Hana in America. Since she was Japanese and he knew his father would approve if he found himself a Japanese wife, he spoke to her. In the fullness of time, they came back to Japan and they got married with the father's blessing. Sadao often told her how he had very nearly not gone to Professor Harley's house, the place where they had met. They were kind to the foreigners who came to their country, America, and they arranged these meetings for them. He had not wanted to go there because the professor's wife was very talkative, but he had gone found Hana there, and they had fallen deeply in love. They were perfectly happy together. At this moment, they saw something on the beach and they realized it was a man. So they ran down to see if they could be of any help. They found this person, obviously badly hurt. Being a doctor, Sadao Hoki pulled the man out of the water into the beach. Then he realized the man had been shot in his lower back. Unfortunately, the sea had thrown that man onto the rocks at the exact point where he had been shot. The result, a lot of blood loss, a lot of shock, and the man was unconscious. They also realized he was an American, their enemy at that, and they knew it was a crime to help an American because the two countries were at war. This man was a sailor from the American Navy. Dr. Sadao Hoki was first and foremost a doctor. He went looking for the cause of this man's troubles and he found the bullet hole. Then he convinced his wife to take the man into their house. The man was filthy dirty, as can be understood. So the first thing that they wanted to do was to get the man cleaned in order that the doctor could operate on him. They had lifted the man and brought him into their house. And Hana said, "I will have a servant you need clean him for us." The servant who looked after the children, including a baby boy who was almost 3 months old. Hana then went to the kitchen. The two servants who were there were frightened because their master had told them that he had brought an American sailor from the sea into their house. The old gardener was very worried. First and foremost, he was shot. Then the sea caught him and wounded him in the rocks. If our master heals this man, the authorities will punish us. Hana also believed it was something wrong to help an enemy. When Yumi saw the man, she refused to clean and wash the man. Hana asked her to do so again and got angry when she refused. So she sent her back. Hana cleansed the man herself. Sadao had been preparing for the operation He laid his instruments out on a sterilized towel and asked her to fetch some more fresh ones. She went out and got some old pieces of mat as well to soak up the blood. But when she went in, it was too late. The blood had already destroyed the mat. He also frightened Hana by asking her to be his anesthetist, but she agreed. His fingers probed. He found the bullet. When the doctor began to operate and blood began to flow, Hana felt very sick. She couldn't face what was happening. She ran outside and began to vomit. He was upset with his wife, but he realized it was something very difficult for her. He was worried about the man. There was no reason why he should live. He realized that he was doing something that made him guilty in the eyes of the law. She came back and then he told her how to use the anesthetic. She wondered if the stories that she heard about the way the Japanese treated the prisoners of war were true. For example, the General Takema. He came home and he used to beat his wife regularly. If he was like that to his wife, maybe he was even more cruel to the prisoners of war. She noticed there were red scars under his ear as if he had been beaten. She tried to tell this to Sadao, but Sadao was intent on his job. He found the bullet and removed it. He thanked his professor of anatomy who had taught him to be very careful and probe deeply before going ahead with his work. The man must have been very strong because in spite of the roughness of the operation, he survived. When he became conscious, he was terrified. Hana told him, "Don't worry," and she gave him something to eat. He asked her how did she know English, and she explained how she had lived in America for some time. The third day after the operation, the young man was sitting up. He wanted to go. He was worried, but Sadao forced him to lie down. He tells the boy, "Listen, obviously I should give you over to the police since you are a prisoner of war. That is why I don't wish to know even your name." When he left the boy and went outside, Hana told him the servants were revolting. They were saying, "This sailor is the enemy of our country and we do not wish to have anything to do with him." Sadao tried to explain to Hana that he is a man. He's a human being after all. Hana agreed, but the servants did not see it that way. An enemy was an enemy who had to be killed or handed over to the authorities. Hana understood the servants were speaking loudly, purposely, so that she would understand. Some time back, he had told her that his name was Tom. Sadao looked after the boy. Every day he examined the wound. Finally, he pulled the stitches from the wound. The young man would be okay. He wrote a letter to the chief of police explaining what had happened. But he put the letter in his desk, unfinished. On the 7th day after that, two things happened. The servants left. They simply packed up their belongings and went. Hana understood why. She did not even try to force them to stay back. In fact, Yumi said, "If the baby requires, send for me. I shall come. I will be in the village." But Hana was clear. She would never call Yumi again. The doctor went to the boy and told him, "You have to try and move. Today a little, tomorrow more, and so on and so forth." In the afternoon, a messenger came. He was called by the general. Had the general found out? But it turned out that the general was in pain. He tells Hana, who was obviously upset. She thought that the soldier had come to arrest him. "I will do something to get this man out of our house." He meets the general and tells him what he has done. The general depends on Sadao's skill for his own life. He does not wish to do anything which would harm the doctor. So he suggests a compromise. He says, "I know assassins. I will send them to your house. In the night, they will kill that man, and that will be the end of the matter." He did not tell Hana what the plan was. The American was out of bed, preparing to go into the garden. "What is this? Who gave you permission?" he asked. And the American smiled at him. "I'm sorry, I did not think I needed permission." He checked the wound, and he realized that it had healed. The boy was still thin. He thanked the doctor. "If I had met another Japanese, perhaps he would have had me killed. Perhaps he would have turned me over. But you have saved my life." That night, he lay awake, thinking that the assassins were coming. Every little sound that he heard through the night, he thought the assassins had come. But the next day, nothing had happened to the boy. The second night passed. Nothing had happened to the boy. On the third night, suddenly, they heard a crash. Hana wanted to see what had happened. Sadao was panicky and he wouldn't let her go. There was no other sound, so they went back to sleep. In the morning, the young man had washed and shaved when he went to his room, and he realized he couldn't face another night like the night that he had just spent. He told the American, "Listen, I'm going to pull a boat around this evening. You're going to take that boat, sail away to the island. Nobody lives on it." Sadao then explained to him how he could escape from there and how he should live there or contact Sadao if he needed anything else. The American understood that what Sadao was doing was very risky. He was saving his life yet again. He dressed himself in the Japanese clothes which Sadao gave him, sat in the boat, he sailed across to the island. The room had been cleaned thoroughly. The servants had come back. A week had passed. An operation was performed on the general, which saved his life. The doctor met the general. He told him that the man had escaped. The general was sorry that he had forgotten to send the assassins. He must have been very sick. The general did not want to talk about the man who had escaped, and the doctor understood that this was something that should never be mentioned again. In his own mind, the doctor remembered the faces of other white men, his professor at his university, the professor at whose house he had met Hana, the talkative woman who was that professor's wife. He thought of himself as superior to these Americans, how ignorant and dirty they were. Once when he had been sick, his landlady had looked after him. He had tried to be grateful to her for her nursing, but it was so difficult, for he found her repulsive. And again he remembered the face of his prisoner. To him, the white American was repulsive. He did not want to see him again, and he wondered, why? Why is it that I could not kill that man even though he was my enemy? Why is it that I could not hand him over to the authorities even though he was my enemy? Who are the characters? Dr. Sadao Hoki, a Japanese surgeon who was educated in America. He is a skilled and dedicated doctor, torn between his duty and humanity. Hana, Dr. Sadao's wife, also educated in America, a modern woman and traditional at the same time. She is initially very frightened, but ultimately supportive of her husband. Tom, the American sailor, the wounded prisoner of war. He's around 25 years old. He's grateful that his life has been saved by the doctor. The old general, Sadao's patient, a high-ranking Japanese military officer, self-centered, educated at Princeton. Yumi, the children's nurse and servant to the household. He refuses to help the American, but is very attached to the children. The old gardener, long-time family servant. He is superstitious. He believes that helping the enemy will bring bad luck. The cook, a female servant who lives with the others. Sadao's father, deceased, strict man who emphasized the value of education, never joked, concerned about racial purity. The settings: Dr. Sadao's house, a low square stone house built on rocks above a narrow beach on the Japanese coast. The beach had bent pine trees, dangerous with sharp rocks. The guest room, former bedroom of Sadao's father. It had matted floors and sliding partitions. The garden, well-maintained garden with pine trees visible from the house. The veranda, which overlooks the house and garden. Dr. Sadao's office, where he works and keeps his medical equipment. The general's palace, where the general lives and receives treatment. The small island, an uninhabited island near the coast where the American escapes. The kitchen, where servants work and where Hana later works alone. It is World War II, a time when the Americans and the Japanese are at war. What are the literary devices in use here? Conflict. There is internal conflict, the duty of a person versus humanity towards each other. External conflict, the war which is going on in the background, the servants' objections. Symbolism, the ocean which represents both danger as well as escape. The mist symbolizes moral uncertainty. The island represents freedom and safety. Irony, a Japanese doctor saves an American enemy. The general forgets his own promise to kill the American. Foreshadowing, will Dr. Sadao be arrested? Hints at future tension. Flashback, memories of Dr. Sadao's times in America, his father's teachings. Imagery, blood soaking through the sand. Face, the color of sulfur. Suspense, waiting for assassins who never come. Uncertainty as to what will happen to the American. Characterization, through actions, Sadao operating. Dialogue, the way the servants talk and protest. Thoughts, Sadao's reflection. Simile, light as a fowl that had been half-starved. Personification, the sea caught him and wounded him with her rocks. Repetition, Hana's question, what shall we do with him? Contrast, Japanese versus American. Duty versus compassion. Tradition versus modernity. Themes, humanity versus patriotism. The main conflict, saving a human life and the loyalty to one's country. Universal humanity. All humans deserve compassion regardless of nationality. Medical ethics. A doctor's duty to save life transcends national boundaries. Moral dilemma. Choosing between what is legally right and what is morally right. Prejudice and racism. Both Japanese and Americans show prejudice. Sadao remembers how racist the Americans were when he studied there. Duty and responsibility. Multiple duties conflict as a doctor, a citizen, a father, a husband. Compassion and mercy. The power of human kindness even towards enemies. Cultural conflict. Traditional Japanese values versus Western education and values. Courage. Moral courage to do what's right despite danger. War and its impact. How war forces impossible choices on ordinary people. Self-reflection. Sadao questions his own actions, his own motivations. Forgiveness. Letting go of hatred despite past hurts. Individual versus society. Personal conscience versus societal expectations. Professional versus personal identity. Being a doctor versus being a Japanese citizen. That's the lesson there for you then. I do hope I have been of help. If I have, please remember to like, subscribe and share. Remember, there might be others who will be requiring our help. Thank you so much for watching.